Hello, and welcome to Nev's Lair. Thank you for joining me in exploring the myths of ancient Egypt. Let us settle into a comfortable position before we begin our journey. This can be sitting in a chair, reclining on a lounger, or laying down. Take a deep breath, hold it, and exhale slowly. Release the tension in your neck and shoulders, and let my voice be your guide to relaxation. Feel free to close your eyes during the video at any time and drift into a well-deserved slumber. There will be some images accompanying my voice, but it is not necessary to enjoy the experience. The topic of the video today is the gods of ancient Egypt. I have selected a few that I would like to talk about today, and will be covering others in a future video. We begin our journey with Osiris, who is known as the Lord and Judge of the dead, firstborn of the first 5 gods, of which the other 4 are Isis, Set, Nephthys, and Horus the Elder. He was born of the earth god Geb and the sky goddess Nut at the dawn of creation, and was one of the most powerful and enduring gods of Egypt. Osiris in ancient Egyptian means powerful or mighty. He also symbolized death, resurrection, and the cycle of Nile floods that Egypt relied upon for agricultural fertility. At first a fertility god, Osiris grew in popularity and influence due to the Osiris myth. Osiris, as the firstborn, assumed rule as lord of the earth, with Isis as his queen and consort. It is said his brother Set became envious of his power and glory. Their relationship deteriorated further after Nephthys, Set's wife, disguised herself as Isis and seduced Osiris, becoming pregnant with the god Anubis. In my favorite version of the myth, Set hatched a plan to kill Osiris. He had his brother's exact measurements taken in secret, and then ordered an elaborate chest coated with lead created precisely to those specifications. When the chest was completed, Set threw a great banquet to which he invited Osiris and 72 others. At the end of the party, he offered the great chest as a gift to the one who could best fit inside it. Osiris, of course, fit perfectly, and once he was inside the coffin, Set slammed the lid on tight and threw it into the Nile River. The murder itself is frequently alluded to, but never clearly described, because the Egyptians believed that written words had the power to affect reality, so they avoided writing directly about profoundly negative events, such as the death of Osiris. Osiris' body travelled out to the sea, and in time his coffin became lodged in a great tamarisk tree growing near Byblos in Phoenicia. The tree grew quickly around the coffin until it completely contained it. The king of Byblos, Malsander, came to the shore with his wife Astarte, and admired the tree and the sweet scent which seemed to emanate from it. He ordered the tree cut down and brought to his palace as an ornamental pillar for the court, and there Osiris remained, trapped inside the coffin within the pillar, until he died. Isis, mourning her husband, set out on a journey to find the body of Osiris. According to Plutarch's version of the myth, Isis had left Egypt in search of her husband and eventually came to Byblos, disguised as an older woman, where she sat down by the shore and cried for her missing husband. She was invited to the palace by the royal handmaidens, who had come to the shore to bathe there, and ingratiated herself to the king and queen. She was asked to be a nursemaid for their young sons. Isis tried to make the younger boy immortal by bathing him in fire, and when Queen Astarte discovered this, she was horrified. Isis then revealed herself as the goddess, and the king and queen promised her anything she wanted if she would only spare them. She requested only the pillar, which they swiftly granted to her. After she recovered his body, she brought it back to Egypt and hid in the Nile Delta. Isis went looking for herbs to make a potion that will revive Osiris, and left Nephthys to guard the body of Osiris. When Set discovered Osiris had returned, he was furious and managed to get Nephthys to tell him where Osiris was hidden. When he found the body, he hacked his brother into 42 pieces, which he scattered far and wide across Egypt and the Nile. His organs were given to Anubis to watch over them. Nephthys, seeing how grief-stricken her sister was, helped Isis to find the pieces of Osiris. The goddesses found and restored the body of Osiris. Anubis helps to embalm the body of Osiris, making him the first mummy. Thoth then gives Isis the words to breathe life back into the body of Osiris. Once Osiris is resurrected, Isis conceives his son and rightful heir, Horus. Osiris, however, would not return to the land of the living, and thus descended to the underworld as judge of the dead. In the Egyptian Book of the Dead, he is routinely mentioned as the just judge in the Hall of Truth during the ritual of the weighing of the heart. I will cover the ritual in more detail later in the story. During his reign as the first king of Egypt, he established the cultural values all later kings were sworn to uphold. When Set murdered the king, the country plunged into chaos, and order was only restored with the victory of Horus over Set. The kings of Egypt identified with Horus during life, and with Osiris in death. As Isis was the mother of Horus, she was considered the mother of every king. The king was her son, and Osiris was both their father and their higher aspect and hope of salvation after death. Now, let's move on to Isis. She is the second born of the first 5 gods, sister wife of Osiris, mother of Horus the Younger, and, as mentioned earlier, symbolically understood as the mother of every king. Her name means goddess of the throne because of her association with the monarchy. She was also known as the Great Magic because of her incredible powers. Isis was the most powerful and popular goddess in Egyptian history. She was associated with virtually every aspect of human life and, in time, became elevated to the position of supreme deity, or mother of the gods, who cared for her fellow deities as she did for human beings. As the devoted wife who resurrected Osiris after his murder and raised their son, Horus, Isis embodied the traditional Egyptian virtues of a wife and mother. Her cult subsequently spread throughout the Roman Empire, and Isis was worshipped from England to Afghanistan. As mourner, She was a principal deity in rites connected with the dead. As magical healer, she cured the sick and brought the deceased to life. And as mother, she was a role model for all women. After the resurrection of Osiris and subsequent descent into the underworld, Isis hid with Horus in the marshes of the Nile Delta until her son was fully grown and could avenge his father and claim his throne. Isis began as a secondary figure to her husband Osiris. However, after thousands of years of worship, she was transformed into the Queen of the Universe and the embodiment of cosmic order. By the Roman period, she was believed to control the power of fate itself. Our next god is Horus. Depicted as a falcon or as a man with a falcon's head, Horus was a sky god associated with war and hunting. He was also the embodiment of the divine kingship, and in some eras the reigning king was considered to be a living manifestation of Horus. The kings of Egypt, with some exceptions, all linked themselves with Horus in life and with Osiris in death. According to the Osiris myth, Horus was the son of Isis and Osiris, magically conceived after the murder of Osiris by his brother Set. Horus was raised to avenge his father's murder. When Horus grew to be a man, he pleaded his case to the gods and challenged Set to the throne. Set, however, did not play fair. After several matches in which Set cheated and was the victor, Horus's mother Isis decided to help her son and set a trap for Set. She snared him, but Set begged for his life, and Isis let him go. This infuriated Horus. When he found out that she had let his enemy live, Horus became angry with his mother and raged against her, decapitating her and replacing her head with that of a cow, earning him the contempt of the other gods, who declared that there would be a final match. In the final match, a boat race, it looked like Horus was going to be the victor. Infuriated, Set turned into a hippopotamus and attacked Horus's boat. Yet, another fight ensued, and their fellow gods declared the match a tie. In the end, Osiris was consulted to see who should be king. Osiris declared that no man should take the throne through murderous ways, as Set had. In the end, Horus took his rightful place, while his father continued to rule the underworld. One tradition holds that Horus lost his left eye fighting with Set, but his eye was magically healed by the god Thoth. Because the right and left eyes of Horus were associated, respectively, with the sun and the moon, the loss and restoration of Horus's left eye gave a mythical explanation for the phases of the moon. Set, also known as Seth, was the god of chaos, violence, deserts, war, and storms. His name means instigator of confusion or destroyer. In the Osiris myth, he is the murderer of Osiris. With Osiris dead, Set became king of Egypt, with his sister Nephthys as his wife. He is depicted as a red beast with cloven hooves and a forked tail, and is the prototype for the later iconography of the Christian devil. Set was originally a hero god who drove away the serpent Apep or Apophis from the barge of the sun god Ra and killed it nightly. Set is often characterized as evil and did manifest many evil qualities, but was not regarded by the ancient Egyptians as an embodiment of evil or darkness. He was rather seen as a necessary balance to gods like Osiris and Horus, who represented all things noble and good, fertility, vitality, and eternity. Set is best known as the world's first murderer in the myth of Osiris. The battles or matches between Set and Horus, which lasted for 80 years, are described in the text the contendings of Horus and Set, and were resolved in one version by Isis, while in another by Neith, with Horus declared rightful king and Set banished to the desert lands. Ra, one of several deities associated with the sun, the great sun god of Heliopolis, Ra was represented with a human body and the head of a hawk. Not only is Ra credited with creating all the gods of the earth, it was believed that he sailed across the heavens in his barge each day and then made a passage through the underworld each night, during which the barge is threatened by the primordial serpent Apep or Apophis, who you would have to defeat in order to rise again. Ra also ruled on earth as the first pharaoh. Egyptian kings claimed they were descended from Ra, thus giving credence to their seat on the throne, calling themselves the son of Ra. Ra's cult was centered in Heliopolis, now a suburb of Cairo. Over time, Ra came to be syncretized with the other sun deities, especially Amun. Ra was among the most important and popular gods of Egypt. Even when the god Amun rose in prominence, Ra's position was undiminished, and he merged with Amun to become Amun-Ra, the supreme god. Anubis, god of the dead associated with embalming. Anubis was concerned with funerary practices and the care of the dead. He was represented as a jackal or as a man with the head of a jackal carrying a staff. In the Old Kingdom, before Osiris rose to prominence as the lord of the underworld, Anubis was considered the principal god of the dead. According to the Osiris myth, Anubis embalmed and wrapped the body of the murdered king, becoming the patron god for embalmers. He was the adopted son of Isis, having been conceived by Nephthys to Osiris after Nephthys infamously disguised herself as Isis and tricked Osiris into sleeping with her. Nephthys abandoned him shortly after his birth in fear that the affair would be discovered by Set. Isis found out about the affair and went searching for the infant, and, when she found him, adopted him as her own. Set also found out about the affair, and this is given as part of the reason for his murder of Osiris. After his assimilation into the Osiris myth, Anubis was regularly seen as Osiris's protector and right-hand man, who guarded the god's body after death. Anubis was the protector of tombs and inventor of mummification. He was also tasked with guiding the souls of the dead to the hall of truth in the underworld and overseeing the ritual of the weighing of the heart. Thoth, the god of writing and wisdom. He was often depicted in the form of a baboon, or a sacred ibis, or as a man with the head of an ibis. Thoth was initially a moon god. The moon not only provides light at night, allowing time to still be measured without the sun, but its phases and prominence gave it a significant importance in early astrology and astronomy. He was believed to have invented language and the hieroglyphic script. He was also to serve as a record keeper and advisor for the gods. As the god of wisdom, Thoth was said to possess the knowledge of magic and secrets unavailable to the other gods. In the ritual of the weighing of the heart, Thoth is depicted as weighing the heart of the deceased in the scale against the feather of the goddess Ma'at, recording the result and reporting the verdict to the judge Osiris. The Book of Thoth contained all the knowledge of the gods. It was nestled in the bottom of the Nile and locked in a series of boxes guarded by serpents. Many pharaohs tried to gain access to it during their reign, but it was never opened. It's said that the knowledge in there was never meant to be possessed by mere mortals. Perhaps this helped the Egyptians make sense of the things they still couldn't quite understand. Somewhere, out there in the bottom of the Nile, lay all the answers. He was the patron god of libraries and of scribes. In every story told of him, Thoth is the divine friend and benefactor of humanity, who gave people understanding through the gift of the written word. He appears in one story as gambling for the 5 days required for Nut to give birth to the first 5 gods, and in others as meditating between the gods and delivering messages. His consort was Seshat, his daughter or his wife, who was his female counterpart and also patron deity of libraries and books. Amun, god of the sun and air. He was usually represented as a man wearing a crown with 2 vertical plumes. Before rising to national importance in the New Kingdom, Amun was worshipped locally in the southern city of Thebes as part of the Theban triad of Amun, Mut, and Khonshu. Supreme king of the gods in some periods. By the time of the New Kingdom, he was considered the most powerful god in Egypt, and his worship bordered on monotheism. After the rulers of Thebes rebelled against a dynasty of foreign rulers known as the Hyksos and re-established native Egyptian rule throughout Egypt, Amun was credited for their victory. In a form merged with the sun god Ra, he became the most powerful deity in Egypt, a position he retained for most of the New Kingdom. Today, the massive temple complex devoted to Amun-Ra at Karnak is one of the most visited monuments in Egypt. Ma'at. Ma'at was the goddess of truth, justice, and morality, daughter of Ra and wife of the moon god Thoth. She set the stars in the sky and regulated the seasons and weighed the hearts of the dead to decide who should have eternal joy in the afterlife. Depicted as a woman wearing a crown with an ostrich feather, her feather of truth was the determining factor. Once placed on a scale, if the deceased heart was heavier than her feather, they would not be permitted to journey to paradise. If the heart was deemed too heavy, the demon Amut would devour it. causing the deceased to die a second time. Although there are many versions of this myth, the one element which remains standard in all of them is the concept of harmony, which is disrupted and must be restored. The principle of Ma'at was at the heart of all Egyptian mythology and every myth. In some form or another, relies upon this value to inform it. We have come to the end of our journey in the sands of Egypt. I hope that the video was educational and also that it was enjoyable and put you in a state of relaxation to prepare you for the next journey in your dreams. For now, I bid you farewell until next time. Sleep well.